Alright, y'all. JCTheSniper here. And as you know, I'm a little bit of a knife fanatic. I just like knives a lot. And today, we're doing another knife review. And you know, sometimes you can get a little tiny knife like this that'll do what you want it to do. You know, tiny little Victorinox, just the standard, you know, little bitty one. And that'll cut what you need to cut. It's kind of cool. And then sometimes you might need something a little bit bigger. So you go for your Kershaw OD1. You know, that'll cut some boxes open, stuff like that. A little bit bigger than the tiny Swiss Army knife, but not huge. That might be useful for you. And then, you know, if that's not big enough for you, maybe something like the Spyderco Stretch, or perhaps a SOG Flash 2 will get the job done for you. You know, just a little bit bigger than these others. Still not huge, but a little bit bigger. And maybe that's not big enough for you. You want your cold steel large Voyager with a 4-inch blade. You know, that's a pretty decent sized knife. Still easily carried every day, but big. You know, that's a pretty good sized knife right there. Or perhaps a Spyderco Endura, about the same size, right at a 4-inch blade. You know, but maybe that's not big enough for you. Maybe you want a Spyderco Resilience. You got a 4¼ inch blade, big old handle, a lot of room to grip it, make some good cuts with that. You know, maybe that's what you want. Or maybe you're just so hardcore, even the Resilience isn't big enough for you. You need something bigger than that. You're sitting here saying, you know, none of those are big enough. I need something that's way bigger than that. And you know, but I don't want to carry my K-bar. I mean, it's big enough, but it weighs 15 ounces and it doesn't fold up and fit in my pocket. You know, what am I going to do? Well, that's where the cold steel Spartan comes in. 4½ inch blade, massive handle, excellent gripping capabilities. This thing is a monster. Oh, look at that thing. This is a beast. And this is the knife we're going to be reviewing today. So hold on to your seats, because we're getting ready to start on this. Get some of these knives out of the way. But, you know, I'm pretty excited about this cold steel Spartan. I've been carrying it for a while now, so I feel prepared enough to give a review on it. So that's what we're going to do. You can see there the Spartan logo. Pretty sweet looking. That's just a sick looking blade. Look at that thing. Alrighty, so let's jump right into the review here. First of all, usage for this blade. How would I imagine you using this blade? Well, there's a few things I think this blade could work for. First of all, obviously, this is not an EDC knife. Can you carry it every day? Yes, I have been, and I will say it carries very well. However, you just cannot, you know, be out in public. Oh, you know, I need to cut open this box, or I need to cut a thread. Pull out your cold steel Spartan and cut the thread off your shirt that's dangling. That is just not good. I mean, now some places you can do that, but in most places people will flip out if you haul out a pocket sword like this to cut something like that. It's just not socially acceptable. So for that reason, I'm going to say it's not an EDC blade. You know, you pull out something like a Stretch, people are going to be okay with that. It doesn't look scary or intimidating. It's just a little knife. You cut something. It's not a big deal. You know, even up to something like the Cold Steel Voyager. Now, this is a bigger knife, and it's definitely large enough that it could intimidate people. However, if you pull this out and, you know, you're just cutting a thread, you're not doing anything freaky with it, it's not as big of a deal. You pull this thing out, people are going to crap their pants because it's just a monster. Now, it's not really, so for that reason, it's not really acceptable for EDC. But for the same reason, this thing would be epic in a defensive role. Because if you pull that thing out, the guy coming at you is going to crap his pants. I mean, that thing is just a freaking beast. It's just monstrous. I mean, you pull that out, you're ready to go to town, and people know you're serious. So, for that reason, it's definitely acceptable for defensive use or emergency tactical use. You know, maybe even carry, you know, as part of your duty gear if you're a soldier or something like that. This is definitely a hard use knife, and it would hold up well in that role. Another role is just as a collector's item. That's, you know, a lot of why I bought it, just because this thing is sweet. You know, I have a big old folding sword. It's just kind of cool. And as you guys know, I like collecting knives, so that's part of why I added it to my collection. So, anyway, basically it's going to be emergency tactical, defensive blade, or a collector's blade, not an EDC blade. Just not useful for that. Now, if you do like I do and you carry 2 or 3 blades on you, it's not a big deal, because you can carry your Spyderco Stretch on your offhand and your Cold Steel Spartan on your battle side, and be ready to rock and roll with it. And still have your blade for your small tasks. So that's not too big of a deal if you're going to carry more than one blade. But if you just want one, this is not the blade. You're probably going to want something more like the Spyderco Stretch. Specs on this knife, as I previously mentioned, the weight is 7.5 ounces. You know, so it's heavy. It's a beast. However, that weight is not horrible. If you consider that the some knives, other knives like this, Bird Caracara G10, this original one weighed like 5.6 ounces. You know, so it's a heavy knife, especially for its size. I mean, there's no comparison between these two, and this one only weighs a couple ounces more. So, you know, you definitely get something for the weight, I guess, is what I'm saying. And the weight is part of what makes this knife effective. So the blade thickness is 4 millimeters, so almost half a centimeter thick. Blade length, 4.5 inches. And overall, 10.5 inches, so it's a pretty long knife. 6-inch handle. That's pretty much it. I guess it is stainless steel lined, and the liners are not milled out, as you can probably see there. No milling on the liners. Solid steel liners, so that thing is pretty dang strong. Yeah, so that's about it for the specs. Blade steel is an AUS 8A, so it's an AUS 8 steel. And it is a bead blasted finish, which I like because the finish is not going to wear off, and it's a nice matte. It's kind of attractive, and I like it better than that crappy shiny paint that the Cold Steel likes to put on knives. So I like the AUS 8 with the bead blast finish. Now, blade steel, it's an AUS 8. I mean, it's reasonable, decent quality steel. Same steel that's in the Columbia River M16. This is an AUS 8 steel. It's a popular steel because it isn't that expensive, and it has decent edge retention, it has reasonable rust resistance, and it's not too hard to sharpen. So for, you know, an inexpensive knife for every man, it's just a decent steel. Now, the reason, more than likely, that they went with AUS 8 for this is because had they gone with, you know, a VG1 like they've got in the Voyager, or a VG10 like Spyderco uses in a lot of its knives, it would have doubled the price of this knife. It would have gone from $94 to $200 easily, MSRP anyway. So More than likely, that's why they chose the AUS 8. However, the AUS 8 has pretty good edge retention. I don't have any trouble with it retaining an edge. You know, I've had as I said, my M16 is an AUS 8. The Bird series is 8CR 13 MOV, which is essentially the same steel. It's got pretty much the same characteristics, and I've not had trouble with my Birds. Same steel that's in the, well, not the same steel, but they use 8CR 13 MOV in the Resilience. You know, there's a lot of blades that use it because it's an inexpensive steel, and it's still pretty good. So it's, you know, it's a mid-level steel. But I'm getting carried away with that. Anyway, it has reasonable edge retention. Not too difficult to sharpen. The steel is not too difficult to sharpen. And it has okay rust resistance. This will rust on you if you don't maintain it well. I spray mine with a coating of Remington dry lube, just to keep them, you know, from getting any moisture on it. And then I will occasionally spray it with rim oil and wipe it off. So there's generally a nice light coating of oil on this to keep it from rusting. But I do that with all my blades, so it's not a big deal. Blade shape. This blade shape, probably, you know, while not really appropriate for EDC, would be monstrous in a defensive encounter. As you can see, this has basically a kukri style blade. Technically it's a kopis, which is a type of blade that the Spartans actually used, and a lot of the ancient Greeks, where it had a handle like this that locked your hand in, and then of course a sword blade, but towards the front of the blade your sword would swell, and it kind of curved down over the whole length, and it would swell like this in the front. And what that does is it concentrates the weight in the front of the blade so that it balances forward, and it provides you a good chopping swing. If you chop something and you hit it right in the sweet spot right here, whatever you're hitting is going to come off. I mean, you can, oh my gosh, you could do so much damage with this. Just feeling it in your hand, you can tell that thing has so much chopping power. You know, you think, okay, Spyderco Resilience, I could use that in a defensive encounter. And yeah, you could definitely use this and you could mess somebody up with it. However, this thing, if you're gonna, you know, you're gonna cut somebody with it. You're gonna lay them open, but you're gonna be cutting them. With this thing and so much weight forward, you are going to be chopping them. I mean, you will literally be taking huge chunks of flesh off. I mean, it's just a beast. You know, now, can it be used for thrust cutting? Definitely. I mean, it's got a good strong point. You could definitely thrust that into somebody. However, the primary usage with this blade shape is going to be a chopping motion, just because that's what it's best at. You could, I mean, that's definitely going to work for stabbing, but chopping is going to be really effective with this blade. So for defensive use, the shape is excellent. For EDC, not so much. I mean, it's a real thick blade, a lot of belly, but it's just not very useful for EDC. I wouldn't use it in that role personally. Speed of deployment method. Obviously the deployment method here is a thumb disc, and you can see that's fully ambidextrous. There's the Cold Steel logo and Taiwan on that side. Of course, I don't care where the blade's made as long as, you know, it's made well. But it's a thumb disc. And if you all have been watching my videos, you will know that I like a thumb stud the least as my deployment method. Thumb studs are my least favorite method of deployment because of what was just happening to me, where you slip over the thumb stud. Thumb studs are slippery, and you can easily slip over it. If it's properly made, it'll grip you better, but it's still easy to flip over it. It works, it's just not as nice. I'm going to have to cut because I'm getting ready to run out of my 15 minutes, so we'll go to part 2.